Thank you all. We have, for one thing, I do welcome the secretary here who's feels like she is probably back as a member of Congress with the amount of time she spent up on the Hill recently, but Madam Secretary, we all appreciate it. It's all very helpful to us. And note that each member sitting to my left is new to the subcommittee, so I want to welcome all of you publicly, and I'm sure Senator Graham, Senator Graham and I have served together forever. We'll get a chance to recognize him as we go ahead. One of the nice things about Senator Graham, he and I have worked together on Judiciary Committee, where his expertise has been very good. We run together the Bipartisan National Guard Caucus and traveled around different parts of the world, some enjoyable and some about as miserable places as you're ever going to see together. So, but he has unique knowledge as a former Judge Advocate General, and I welcome him. Because as I mentioned earlier, when we were meeting, the chairman and ranking members of this committee have usually worked to try to produce a bipartisan, usually unanimous bill, as Senator McConnell and I did when we were at one time or another either chairman or ranking member. Senator Gregg and I have, and others will. And you were mentioning that Rich Verma is leaving, and I understand, Rich, you're going back to practicing law, but we'll miss you. We missed you when you left the Senate, went down there. We'll miss you now. Madam Secretary of Congress is yet to finish work on the fiscal year 2011 budget. We received yesterday the justification materials for the fiscal year 2012, so our question probably straddled both. The House majority's proposed drastic cuts in your budget for the remainder of 2011. The impact of those cuts on the operations of our embassies, which all Americans who travel, study, or work abroad depend on. Every time there's a problem in a country, any American in that country goes first and foremost to the American embassy. We saw that in Egypt and Libya. On our national security programs that go from Afghanistan to Mexico, and you mentioned that the President of Mexico is coming here tomorrow. We work on the development of foreign markets for U.S. exports, which of course create thousands upon thousands of jobs here in the United States. And we have our influence on international organizations, all of which are going to be affected by these cuts. We've all been fascinated by recent popular uprisings in Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, Iran, Yemen, elsewhere. I think that the courage and determination of the people, these countries, in overcoming generations of fear and anxiety and apathy is extraordinary. It's inspiring, but it also raises the question, what comes next? And in fact, in many ways, it's hard to see how the government of Iran doesn't come out stronger as a result of all this upheaval, and that concerns everybody here. And I think the U.S. should be a strong voice for people living under repressive, corrupt regimes who are demanding the freedoms we often take for granted, the support we need in countering terrorism around the world. We've seen the power of internet, Facebook, Twitter, and other social media. We saw how the Mubarak regime tried to silence it and failed. We know how Iran rulers are cracking down on it. And since 2000, the reason I mentioned this subcommittee since 2008, I mentioned especially for our new members, has appropriated $50 million for programs to promote internet access and circumvent government censorship around the world. It's something that other countries hadn't done, we've done, and it's one of the reasons why people have their voices heard now. And so we can talk about how the State Department is using these funds. I think that your budget request is a far more responsible approach to the national security challenges we face and what we've seen in the other bodies' fiscal year continuing resolution, fiscal year 2011, we face threats. We have important interests not only in the Middle East and South Asia, but in every continent. China, our biggest competitor, is expanding its influence in every single hemisphere. And we've got to be in every hemisphere if we're going to combat that. There's a global food crisis. Some seem oblivious to. We can't punt these challenges down to the next generation. We have human rights and tolerance, transparent, accountable government, the rule of law. That's why I wrote the Leahy Amendment a decade and a half ago, and it was passed with bipartisan support. So I'm going to put all my rest of my statement in the record, turn over to Senator Graham, and then yield to you, Madam Secretary, and we can go to questions.